That's good enough for me. We got plenty of people in here. So let's kick it off. Just so you know, everybody, my name is Jason Buck. I'm one of the business development directors here at Lean Techniques. If this is your first time at a Lean Bites, just as a remember, it's a short 16-minute talk. Get it? Bites. We're going to work to provide you with simple, practical tips, techniques that you can start applying in your organization today. Just as far as housekeeping items, if you have any questions throughout today's talk, just drop them in the chat and we'll try to address them at the end if time allows, or we'll follow up with you as well via email for more insight. And at the end, there's going to be a survey that pops up. Please do us a huge favor and complete that. It really helps us with future Lean Bites and how we can continue to improve. So with that, we'll get started. Very excited to introduce Scott Sauber. He's our Director of Engineering here at LT and also a Microsoft MVP. And he's going to be discussing what the future of software development looks like, given the advancements of AI. Scott, over to you.
All right. Yeah, welcome everybody. My name's Scott, like Jason said, and I'm going to talk to you about software development in 2045. So just kind of level set on kind of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about these 3 Ps here. We're going to talk about kind of the past and kind of look back like 20 years ago, like what was software like and what was technology like back then. And then kind of talk about what can AI do today, and then hopefully use those 2 things to kind of inform what software might look like in about 20 years. So if you think back to 2005, which some young folks on the call might be saying like, hey, I was a toddler back then. But for me, I was in high school. And as I think about like technology back then, I'm like, hey, I was in high school. Like 2005 wasn't that long ago, right? Like 20 years ago wasn't that long ago. But then as I was kind of thinking through some of this stuff of what technology was like back then, at the time, BlackBerry dominated the market. If anybody remembers BlackBerry or had BlackBerries, which if anybody's like, what's a BlackBerry? It's kind of like, exactly. BlackBerries aren't really a thing anymore because about 2 years after 2005, so in 2007, Steve Jobs stood on stage and announced this thing called the iPhone, which then kind of kicked off all of the smartphone kind of generation that we have today and how it changed kind of everything. And 3G hadn't even been released yet in the US. So it was around in Europe, but that didn't come out till 2008. So we have 4G and 5G now. And the average internet speed at homes was between 1 megabit per second and 5 megabits per second, which will probably not run your Netflix. So nowadays we have like roughly 1,000 megabits per second, or a lot of people do. So speeds have improved from 200 to 1,000x in the last 20 years in terms of internet speeds. YouTube had just launched this thing called MySpace, dominated social networks, although there was an up and comer called the Facebook that was starting to go through college campuses at the time. And sorry for any software developers who are on the call. I didn't do a trigger warning, but Internet Explorer 6 was the dominant browser at the time, which was not fun to maintain. I had to maintain some sites that needed to interact with IE6, and that was not fun. And Chrome didn't actually even exist for another 3 years. So Chrome didn't come out till 2008. And there wasn't even AWS around at the time. So AWS didn't come out till 2006. And I think Azure came out in like 2009, 2011, somewhere in there. So a lot of the major cloud providers weren't even around back in 2005. So if you kind of think about these things of like, hey, these smartphones that we all have and, have pictures of kids and family members and stuff like that on them, those weren't really a thing. Cloud providers, which kind of changed how we develop software, weren't really a thing back then either. So I kind of want to paint that picture because at the end of the day, 20 years is a really long time. And so a lot can change in that 20 years, especially in the tech industry. And I really like this quote. That's change has never been this fast, yet will never be this slow again. So I think technology is continuously improving all the time, and new releases are coming out all the time, but things are only going to pick up speed over time. So I just kind of want to paint that picture of where things were at 20 years ago, because I think that helps frame up how different things could be in the future, where right now phones kind of changed our world, but There's probably going to be other things in the next 20 years that kind of change how we function. But that's kind of the past. Let's talk about what AI can do today. So I'm going to do a live demo of a tool called Bolt. So it's just a site called bolt.new. And I'm just on the site here, and I'm just going to ask it, hey, can you build me a React app that's a sales dashboard for salespeople? So I'm just going to ask it to do that and kind of see what it does. And it's going to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and scaffold out an initial application for you. You can kind of see it starting to build out some of that stuff. And fun fact, you can actually do this on your own if you want as well. And it'll actually generate all different stuff because AI kind of does its own thing and is not deterministic and like always giving you the same results all the time. So it's generating all this code, finally finished it, roughly 200 lines or so of code, and then it's going to show me kind of a preview of what it generated. So let's take a look at what that preview looks like as it loads up here. You can kind of see on the left, it's telling you kind of what it did, different things that it built out. So if you look over here, it's saying, hey, I've got like, total revenue, average deal size. This looks pretty good. Like I probably couldn't have designed something that good in this short amount of time. Let's say I want this in dark mode. So I'm just going to let that roll while it kind of does some of that stuff. But you can kind of see like, I really quickly just kind of scaffolded out a proof concept of the sales dashboard that I created. But you can then interact with this, kind of change the code. You can still see all this code that it generates. Like you can even notice for those of you who are software developers, it's actually like creating pretty readable code for some of this stuff. So you can kind of see the different changes it did. And then now I'm in dark mode, right? So you can kind of see like today we've got some of these tools, and I would say Bolt isn't even the best tool that's out there. I just kind of wanted to demo kind of what some of these tools are capable of. So you can kind of have a sense of what, is out there. Again, I could probably spend like a whole hour on this. I'm probably going to go a few minutes over the 16 minutes. So just fair warning, but feel free to drop off. You're not going to offend me or anything like that. I just kind of want to give you a taste of kind of what is possible with some of these tools today, kind of frame up where things are going in the future. So what's there today? You can use AI to automate some repetitive tasks that you have. So for instance, if you have different pages that you need to create, you can help it scaffold out UIs for you and kind of give you, I would say like that initial like starter point where it might scaffold out like some initial 40 to 80% of those easier things to do. Like what we just saw. You can see like I could do a rapid prototype, or I can just kind of prompt my way into creating a reasonable looking prototype, which is pretty cool. If you look under the hood of the code that it's generated, if you are a software developer, it's pretty reasonable and readable, but you can also change that if you want. But I would also say if you're not using AI in some way, if you're a software developer to build software, I think you're falling behind at the end of the day. So even if that's like you're asking ChatGPT questions of like, hey, I'm hitting this problem, how do I solve it? Or can you explain this for me? Like even if you're not using it to generate you code, I think everybody should be using AI today. And that's probably unanimous across every industry. Like my wife just talked to me yesterday about she used Copilot to generate a job description and, get her 80% of the way there. So I think everybody should be using AI today, no matter really what profession you're in. The Bolt tool I showed isn't necessarily the best tool out there, but this isn't necessarily a talk around that. But if you want to reach out to me later, I can show some other demos of some other tools that are out there as well. But what is not there today? So AI does not create perfect code. So if you're looking at this saying like, oh my goodness, like I can just have this create me my perfect code. That's not there today. It still will make mistakes, even like silly mistakes, like forgetting curly braces or semicolons or things like that. Sometimes as much as 25% of the time, depending on what you're doing. It's really not good at doing a lot of things simultaneously. So you can't really say like, hey, build this part of the app and that part of the app and that part of the app and that part of the app. You kind of have to kind of guide it one step at a time. So it's not really great at doing lots of different things simultaneously. You usually can't take like a mock-up and feed it into a tool and get like kind of perfect looking code. So it'll mess up things like color schemes or moving icons in the wrong spot, just like random stuff that you can't really explain because people actually can't explain why AI does the things that it does, like the people who research this stuff and create these models and things like that. So it's still kind of a black box. So you can't kind of just take this and expect everything to be 100% what your mockup looks like. But it also doesn't really know how your business needs to work. So you still need to guide it. You need to tell it kind of what you're looking for and how your business might operate today, how it needs to operate in the future. So you still need to guide AI tools at the end of the day. They can't just like autonomously create all of this stuff for you. So there's a lot of uncertainty around like maybe you're sitting there like, hey, I'm a software developer, or maybe I work with software developers. Will I or will they still have jobs in 2045? Yes, but it will be different. And we'll kind of talk about what I mean by that as we keep going. But I think software development will kind of turn into a technical project manager or kind of like an architect type role, where you're kind of guiding AI to do a lot of the heavy lifting, again, fast forwarding 20 years in the future. And I think software developers will have to make sure they're good communicators. So for instance, I was typing into these tools, like if you can't do written words, or we'll talk a little bit later about where I think software development's going, where I don't even think keyboards will be involved eventually, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I think communicating clearly will be important because, for instance, right now, if you tell AI like, hey, go vacuum out my car, it's probably going to vacuum the outside of your car as well as the inside of your car, because it will literally do what you tell it to do. So ultimately, at the end of the day, you kind of have to be a good communicator with AI, as well as I think managing the work will be important. So like how you split up the work, how you're working in small slices, trying to deliver business value to end users. I think that stuff will become even more important than it is today. There's still going to be a human in the loop. Like I don't see in 20 years that AI will just be autonomously writing software without anybody validating it. I still think there's going to be a human in the loop validating all this stuff. And this is another key takeaway, I think, for a lot of software developers. I think breadth will be more important than depth, meaning I think if you're only like an expert in this one little niche thing, I think you're going to struggle in the world of AI. Whereas I think being more T-shaped, so kind of like the top of the T, the wide part of the T is you're knowledgeable about a lot of things, but you might not have a lot of depth. Whereas the long part of the T is you might be deep in one or two areas. So I think the breadth is going to be important and having some of those full stack skills. So front end, back end, security, cloud, DevOps, all of those kinds of things. But ultimately, I think AI will help you with the depth. So if you don't know exactly how to do something in one of the two, but you should be doing this certain thing, I think AI can help you with the depth and asking it questions and things like that. So really, some kind of existential question developers have to ask themselves is, do you like the process of creating software, or do you like being able to solve business problems with technology? Because I think the process is going to change, and I enjoy the process of creating software, but I also like being able to solve business problems with technology. So I think you're going to have to kind of put more emphasis on solving business problems with technology more than like the current act of manually creating software. And I also say this all the time, that developers are the last line of defense for a bad idea. So a lot of different ideas can go through different product people and things like that. But I can't tell you how many times in my career I've seen it with myself and others where it's like, okay, what are you trying to do here? And then you kind of get to oh, well, there's a different way to solve that problem. So I still think developers will be the last line of defense for a bad idea. And at the end of the day, I think there's always going to be a place for people who can connect business with technology. Like that's not going to go away anytime soon. But at the end of the day, I think AI is just another abstraction, which we've had these for years. So like I don't write assembly anymore and I don't miss it. I don't manage memory anymore, or manage threads, or write my own operating system or web server, and I don't miss any of those things. I also like, as people move to the cloud, I don't miss buying servers and managing that stuff because the cloud kind of takes care of that stuff for us. And the question I would ask on that is like, did we lose jobs from those abstractions? Well, maybe like there's probably not as many assembly writing programmers anymore, but there's a lot more web developers and mobile developers now. So like the jobs just kind of shifted over time. So I don't really think we lost jobs from those abstractions. I think the jobs just kind of changed over time. So at the end of the day, a lot of those things have enabled productivity, not killed jobs. So some things to look forward to with AI. Like I said, 20 years is a very long time. I think the future is kind of this natural language programming where you'll just be talking and playing English, and software developers will be kind of architects, and AIs will be more the builders. And I also think, as I alluded to earlier, I think keyboards and mice will go away long term. Like we still might have them around, but I don't think we'll interact with them as much. Which, if you think about it, which this kind of surprised me is this low, that the average adult types roughly 40 words per minute, but speaks 160. And I might be at 200 trying to get through this in the next couple minutes. But you can see like that's 4 times more productive speaking than typing. And I think as you have this natural language where you're not like speaking in code and saying like add a semicolon or any of those kinds of things, you're just saying, hey, build me this. That's a way faster to and more natural to speak. So I think speaking and voice will kind of take over than keyboard and mice. But this will actually give us more time to create ideal user experiences too, because a lot of us have dealt with experiences that are not ideal. But I also think apps will start to be more of a prompt too. So you might walk into your desk and be like, hey, show me my tasks for today. Okay, order them by priority. And you'll know what you mean by that based on how you've worked things in the past. And you can say like, hey, frame up an email that says, these kinds of things. Like I think apps will be more of a prompt as well and less of like, click on this button and do this thing. You'll kind of just tell applications what you want. But also get a little nerdy for the software developers in the room. I think you'll have like self-healing bugs. So for instance, if a null reference or null pointer exception happens, I think AI will see that in the logs and propose a fix of like, hey, I saw this in logs. Here's a fix for this to handle that case. I think CI/CD pipelines, if they flake out for some reason, AI will diagnose that as well. Memory leaks as well. And then we kind of have this today, but I think it'll go next level of self-maintaining systems too, because it's not just creating the systems, it's also maintaining them. I think AI will help verify that there's not any behavior changes as you're updating your frameworks and dependencies and things like that. So to wrap up, some benefits of AI in 2045. I think productivity is going to increase by over 100x. I also think it kind of changes the build versus buy equation. So as you think about should you build software or buy it, I think if you can build it faster and more what you want, you might lean towards building because it makes exactly what you want. And Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, goes so far as to say SaaS is dead. And he sees more of an AI agent world. I'm not so sure I believe that quite yet, but I think it's an interesting thing for him to say. And he's kind of in the same lines of that build versus buy equation as well. Because I'm sure many people on this call, like the worst spot you can be in is if you buy something off the shelf and then customize it to fit you. And now you have like the worst of build and buy. So I think people will buy or build more things. As well as AI can create the pro code, but it takes low code levels of effort. So I think that will be a big thing in 20 years, and this will create more efficient companies, which hopefully means, lower prices for everything and stuff like that. But some downsides, I'm curious about how junior developers will progress because, a lot of the code that they will write is AI generated. So I'm curious how they will, if they'll stagnate their progression a little bit. But a kind of question I don't really have answered is, will they need to? Like, I don't really need to know assembly or anything like that. So I'm kind of curious how junior developers will progress and if they need to. But you'll need to be able to recognize hallucinations because AI does create things that, can never work. So you'll need to recognize some of that kind of stuff. But an over reliance on this might degrade people's skills, as well as some studies have shown that people who use AI move faster, but have less retention of how it works under the hood. So I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I think there are some downsides that we just kind of have to see how they play out in 2045. So some takeaways from this. I think AI is, at the end of the day, is just another productivity abstraction, just like we've had for years. I don't think it's going to eliminate as many jobs as some people think that it might, or because we've had this worry in software development for decades now of like drag and drop tools and things like that. I think AI is just another productivity abstraction. I do think humans will still be in the loop, and you'll have more natural language programming will be the standard through voice. Like a lot of my kids, for instance, use voice when they're like turning on the Roku. They'll just say like, "Hey, open up the YouTube TV app," and I'll just open up. So I think that'll kind of be the standard too. We'll have these self-healing systems like I talked about. I think productivity will jump by 100 times or more. I also think the build versus buy equation changes a lot, where things will trend towards more building exactly what you want versus buying something off the shelf that you're not super happy with. And then also the kind of last takeaway is AI is the worst it will ever be today, and it's not going away anytime soon, and it's only going to get better over time. So I think if you've been kind of sitting on the sidelines, I think now is a good time to kind of jump in and kind of see what's possible, as well as kind of keep tracking what's trending on in the future. So with that, I know I went a few minutes over here. I do have a QR code here of if you want to add me on LinkedIn, or if you want to shoot me any questions about anything I talked about, or if you want to hear about some other tools in the tool belt, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or my email there. And yeah, that's what I've got. So thanks for coming, everybody, and I'll turn it over to Jason to wrap us up.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. I think that for me, it kind of squashes a little bit of the fear of AI taking over the entire world and everything. There's always going to be that human element. So that's good. Our next Lean Bites is going to be March 4th at 11:45. Tim Gifford, our CEO, and Jacqueline Overton, our marketing guru, are going to be speaking on decision-making framework and helping organizations evaluate their data maturity. So it should be a pretty interesting one there. Also, just a reminder, you're going to have a survey pop up at the close of this. So when that does, please help us out and fill that out. Otherwise, we will see you in exactly 28 days from now on March 4th. Thanks so much for attending, everybody. Take care. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.